Hello, good day, everyone. Our lesson today is about the emergence of social sciences or social science disciplines. Uh, it is under the disciplines and ideas in the social sciences. This is a specialization subject of HUMSS students. Okay, this is module 3 of quarter 1. Okay, so again, we are going to talk about the emergence of social science disciplines. Allow me to present to you the most essential learning competency, explain the major events and its contribution that led to the emergence of the social science disciplines. So, pag-uusapan natin dito, paano nga ba nabuo itong mga disiplinang panlipunan. So, here's the learning objectives. Identify connections and traces of historical foundation, social context and social foundations that led to the development of social science as a discipline. Demonstrate an understanding of the role of social science disciplines in the real world. And lastly, understand how each discipline's historical foundation and its emergence or discovery is important to the current society. Siguro instead of the understand, I'm going to convert that into something like uh, appreciate the historical foundation of each disciplines and the importance of the different disciplines to the current society. Okay? So, yun na lang ang gagawin ko sa objective number 3. Um, by the way, this is a continuation of my discussion last week, pero I did not record this the lesson 1 uh, last week because I did that in during my class, my synchronous class with my students. So now we are on lesson 2. I'm going to talk about linguistics, political science, psychology, sociology, and demography. So, ito ang pag-uusapan natin sa lesson 2 ng emergence of the different social sciences. So, let's talk about the historical context of emergence of each discipline. The linguistics, the one that the five disciplines that I have mentioned a while ago. Let's start with this linguistics. We all know that when we say linguistics, it is the scientific study of language. Actually, I have taught this to my class, and I think my class are they are all aware of what linguistics is. It encompasses the description of language, the study of their origin, the analysis of how children acquire knowledge, and how people learn languages other than their own. Okay, so if you are talking about different languages, then you will be touching the the one discipline in social science. Okay, across cultures, the early history of linguistics is associated with a need to disambiguate discourse, especially for ritual texts or in arguments. So, yon yung mga may specialization about language, some discourse they have to disambiguate that. Is it really important or not? Okay. Okay, this often led to the explorations of sound meaning mappings and the debate over conventional versus naturalistic origins for these symbols. So, syempre, mayroon talagang kokontra doon if you will disambiguate some of the discourse in language. And finally, these led to the processes by which larger structures are formed from units. Okay. Mayroong mga nagsasabi, bakit daw ang linguistic is part of the social disciplines? Yeah, originally it is part of the social disciplines or discipline of social sciences. Pero if we put this into the academic or in academic, language is really part of English department or the language department. So, hindi to hawak ng social science. I think, para sa akin, in my opinion, mas ano sila doon, mas master nila if English professors and teachers will handle linguistic discipline. Number two is political science. Political science is the systematic study of governance by the application of empirical and generally scientific methods of analysis. So, uh, if you can still remember with our lesson in politics and governance last semester, we have talked about the meaning of political science, and everybody would agree if you would tell us that the meaning or tell me that the meaning of social science is the study of governance. Okay, anything that happened in the anything that is that happened in the government is or has something to do with social science. The systematic study of politics dates back into the ancient times. Totoo to. The oldest legal and administrative code that survived in its entirety is the Code of Hammurabi, inscribed in the pillar block of black basalt. Okay? Kung naalala niyo yung mga lesson natin sa araling palipunan way back junior high school days, your teachers sorry, your araling palipunan teachers discussed to you Hammurabi Code, 'di ba? Na isang sinasabi nga nila na isa itong medyo mahigpit na batas. Contemporary political science traces its roots primarily to the 19th century when the rapid growth of natural sciences stimulated the enthusiasm for the creation of new social science. So, yon. It was around 19th century talaga mas lalong nag-boom or nag-bloom yung social science. Pero way back ancient time, natatalakay na rin ang political science. Isang patunay dito ay yung Code of Hammurabi. Okay? Now let's move on to psychology. Alam naman natin na pag sinabing psychology, this is the scientific study of behavior and the mind. Okay? And from around 600 to 300 BC, Greek philosophers inquired about the wide range of psychological topics. They were especially interested in the knowledge and how human beings come to know the world. And this field of philosophy is known as epistemology. Okay? And also, alam naman natin that when we say psychology, I did not include this in my PowerPoint. Psychology is also a scientific study or enterprise that obtains knowledge through systematic and objective methods of observation and experimentation. So, if you will observe how people behave in a certain or in a specific place, you observe that and you observe, and then to the point that you will experiment their behavior. It has something to do with psychology as well. Uh, some or mostly psychologists study the behavior of the person, which refers to any action or reaction that can be measured or observed, such as the blink of an eye, or an increase in heart rate, or the unruly violence that often erupts in a mob. Okay? Or I would say yung napapanahon natin ngayon is the prank. Okay, ang hilig ng mga Pilipinong mag-prank ngayon. You can also study the behavior of the victim. Okay? And if you will do that, that is also part of psychology. Okay? Pwede nating ma-interact yung psychologist subject as a discipline to the person being the victim of the prank. Okay? Um, at the end of the prank, matutuwa ba sila? Or at the end of the prank, magagalit ba sila? Okay? So that's also a behavior. Okay? And also, psychologists study the mind of the person. Okay? Not only the behavior, but the mind, in which it refers to both conscious and unconscious mental states. These states cannot actually be seen, only inferred from observable behavior. Sabi nga nila, ang hirap basahin ng utak ng tao. So, medyo dito tayo mahihirapan if you will study the mind of the person. Pero if an expert, or like for example the psychologist, I think napag-aralan naman talaga nila yon on how to study the mind of the person, or even animals. So I think kaya nila yon. Okay, now let's move on to the next, which is sociology. Alam naman natin to dahil na-discuss na natin ito sa part 1, or in some other module, part of the module. When we say sociology, this is the scientific study of human social relation or group of life. The first definition of sociology was by French philosopher Auguste Comte. Okay? Siya talaga yung sikat kapag tinatalakay natin ang sociology, a French philosopher. Okay? So in sociology, you will study how people interact with one another in a specific place. Okay, so a group of people. And in 1838, Comte coined the term sociology to describe his vision of a new science that would discover laws of human society, resembling the laws of nature by applying the methods of factual investigation that has proven so successful in the physical sciences. Okay? Siguro na-vision na niya, na-visualize na niya noon uh, kung paano makisalamuha yung mga tao sa society. Kaya pinag-aralan na niya ito even year 1838 pa lamang. Sociology as a scholarly discipline emerged primarily out of Enlightenment thought as a positivist science of study shortly after French Revolution. Okay? So, naniniwala kasi isa doon sa mga proponent ay si Auguste Comte. Naniniwala siya na anything that happened in the society is natural. Okay? So, yan. And its genesis owed to various key movements in the philosophy of science and philosophy of knowledge arising in reaction to such issues like modernity, capitalism, urbanization, rationalization, secularization, colonization, and imperialism. So, um, dahil talaga sa mga nangyayari sa lipunan, kaya doon nagsimula yung emergence ng uh, sociology as a discipline. Okay? And lastly, demography. Okay, alam naman natin, and na-introduce ko na to dati, when we say demography, we talk about human population. Like for example, the size, the composition, the distribution across space, and the process through which population changes. Kaya pinag-uusapan na rin dito yung migration, immigration of people from one place to another, or vice versa. Okay? Take note, even birth, death, migration, ayan, I have mentioned earlier. These are the three important concepts in demography, jointly producing population stability or change. So, yun talaga ang common na topics kapag pinag-uusapan yung demography. Most of 19th century uh, most of 19th century, demographic studies continued to emphasize the phenomenon of mortality. It was not until demographers noted that considerable decline of fertility had taken place in the industrialized countries during the second half of 19th century that they began to study fertility and reproduction with much interest as they studied mortality. So, pag pinag-uusapan talaga yung birth rate, death rate, so hindi talaga may iwasan na pag-usapan din ang mortality rate and fertility rate. Fertility and also reproduction rate. Kaya yun yung mga important topics in demography. And the phenomenon of differential fertility with its implications about selection and more particularly about the evolution of intelligence evoked widespread interest as shown in Charles Darwin theories in the works of Francis Galton. And another one, during the period between the two world wars, demography took on a broader interdisciplinary character kasi marami na doon ang namatay, marami na doon yung mga isinilang siguro. So, mas lalang pinag-usapan yung demography during World Wars. Okay? So, that would be all. Maraming salamat sa inyong pakikinig. At para sa mga estudyante ko, mayroon akong ibibigay na activity, just a short activity as asynchronous learning time. For your asynchronous learning time. Bye, everyone.